Hello, welcome to this session. This is session 6 of Unit 5, Taxation and Government Expenditure in Ghana. In this session, we'll be looking at some sources of government expenditure in Ghana. Right. So over the past few sessions, we've been looking at the taxation bit of this unit where we've considered the various sources of revenue in Ghana and then the incidence of taxation and some inefficiencies of taxes. Right. So in this session, we'll be focusing on the expenditure bit of this unit where we'll be looking at some sources of revenue of the government of Ghana. So by the end of this session, we would be able to describe the various sources of public expenditure in Ghana. We would also be able to analyze the implication that the government spends a chunk of government revenue on compensation of public sector workers and analyze the implications of pattern of public capital expenditures on the economy of Ghana. So we'll zoom in right into looking at various sources of expenditure in Ghana. The very first one is compensation of employees. So the government has some workers, that's the public servant, the civil servant, and the others. So the government has to pay these people, the parliamentarians, the president, and all these are all workers of the government. So the country must pay them, right? So compensation is one of the expenditure that takes a very huge portion of the resources which has been mobilized by the country. Right? Compensation makes up, per the previous budget, compensation makes up 32% of the country's expenditure. I mean, it takes 32% of the total revenue that we're able to mobilize by the country. Right. So what this brings is that it leaves just few amount to be spent on other areas such as capital expenditure. Right now, remember that these are not just the expenditure areas. The government will also pay interest, and then if interest comes in, then there will be fewer amount to have for capital development and other developmental projects as well. So they are saying the compensation to employees include the payment of wages and salary to the public sector. This payment also includes the payment of social securities, right? So it takes a very larger part of the resources of the country, and then this will cause the government to have fewer funds available for capital project development. Right? The next expenditure item is interest payment. Now you don't expect any loan or any borrowing without interest, so the government also spends most part of its revenue in paying interest on domestic borrowings and also foreign borrowings, right? So recently what we are facing now is the inability of the government to service some of these borrowings, that's to pay the interest on them, leading to a debt restructuring as well as some let me I don't want to say begging, but then some plea to the foreign community to actually spare us in paying some of this interest at the moment, right? The other source of expenditure of all public expenditure is capital expenditure. So this expenditure includes expenditure on infrastructure and long-term items like roads, railways, government buildings, and industries. Right. So this one's extend more than a year, but then as we said earlier, because the compensation and interest takes a huge portion of government revenue, the government is unable to spend more money on capital expenditure, right, bringing in some gap in our capital development. Right. The other source of expenditure or public expenditure is grants to other government units. So the government must also give funds to the other government units like the district assemblies, like the ministries, like the parliament and all that stuff. So government gives other funds to them. So you know of the district assembly common fund, which is funded by the central government. That's the government transfer funds into these common funds annually for developmental projects in this district or in these communities, right? Then we have other sources of government expenditure such as goods and services and social benefits and tax refunds. So these are all sources of government expenditure in Ghana, right? So in this session, we've described the various sources of government expenditure in Ghana. We are seeing the the greatest portion of government expenditure is on compensation to public sector employees, right? So this brings us to the end of this session, as well as the end of this unit, taxation and expenditure in Ghana. So let's take some few minutes to recap what we've discussed in this session, and if there is still any doubt or something is not clear in the previous session, kindly do well to revisit those slides and if possible revise or seek clarity from the study manuals.